My name is Rachel Martin, and I'm going to give a speech on creation versus evolution. We all exist in the present. We know what's happening now, and we know what happened a week ago. But can we know what happened thousands of years ago? If we weren't there to observe the events, how can we explain what happened? How can we explain our present if we don't know our past? Our outlook on the present is dependent of our outlook on the past. Therefore, I find it vital for us to know the history of humanity. In order to make a better future for ourselves, we must examine our origins and how we came into this world. It affects every area of life and changes the way that we perceive ourselves and the things around us. I grew up in a Christian family, but was not a follower of Christ myself. Being a logical thinker, I decided to look into the scientific part of faith. I wanted to know if there was any proof to back up the claims that the Bible made, and if there was proof to the thought of evolution. I took several courses and did countless hours of research in order to discover the truth using science. I found the scientific proof that supports creation is widely ignored, while the scientific proof that supports evolution is widely exaggerated and sometimes not nearly as credible. In this speech, I will explain why Christians associate themselves with the idea of creation and what makes evolutionists disagree so strongly that there's a God that created humanity. We'll talk about the facts of science and let you examine the evidence for yourself and what you will believe. To start off, I will explain where these two very different ideas came from and how they impact our society. Christians believe that they have a historically accurate source that tells them of the beginning of the world, the Bible. It comes from a higher power which was created the world and everything in it. It gives us a first-hand account of what happened on the day that we were created. Evolutionists believe that the Bible is an inaccurate source because of the scientific evidence that they have examined and interpreted. Their theory comes from Charles Darwin, who was a naturalist and geologist who proposed the idea of natural selection. He also claimed that his theory was based solely on science. Science supposes that our universe obeys in mathematical laws and are constant over time and space. Because of this regularity, scientists are able to make many accurate predictions about our past and our future. This helps give evolutionists a scientific base and helps their theories seem almost more credible than the theory of creation. However, the idea of creation supposes the exact same thing. Creationists believe that there is a God that upholds all things created by his supreme power. Both creationists and evolutionists expect the universe to function in a logical and consistent fashion. Therefore, creationists and evolutionists examine the same evidence, but they interpret it in different ways. They see the past differently, therefore it affects how they see the future and our present. Facts are neutral and have to be interpreted. Therefore, it is necessary to criticize the means at which evidence is researched and how the information is interpreted. Now that we have uncovered the way that these two parties think, let's examine some scientific evidence that is used to support creation. There are numerous examples that I could give you, but we're going to focus on one specific one, and that's going to be Noah's flood. This flood is depicted in the book of Genesis, where God rains down waters over the earth to wipe out humanity and cover the earth. The only survivors were Noah and his family and the animals. A flood of this magnitude that is depicted would have left some sort of physical evidence on the earth. If the Bible is accurate, living organisms would have buried vast amounts of carbon, which would form today's fossil fuels. Looking at how much fossil fuel we have today, there would have to have been much more vegetation prior to the flood, which would mean that some of our seas would have been dry land, so the world wouldn't have been the way that it is today. According to PBS.org, during the 1990s, a pair of geologists, William Ryan and Walter Pittman, collected evidence pointing to an ancient flood in the Middle East around 7,500 years ago. Sediment core samples that they took from the bottom of the Black Sea showed sections of once dry, sun-baked land. If you've ever been to the Grand Canyon, you'll kind of notice the same thing. There are beach lines along the top, and that's from two lakes that used to be there. Creationists use this to support their theory as well. They conclude that after the flood, the lakes overflowed. So when a dam is overflowed by water, the weakest points start to decay rapidly. Therefore, the Grand Canyon would have formed quickly, supporting the creationist explanation. Since there is so much evidence for creation, how can we tell our society that there is more out there than just a theory of evolution? In order to help our society recognize the scientific evidence for creation, we must educate the world on the facts. In our public schools, the only theory that is being taught is evolution. If we taught the theory of creation alongside it or instead of it, we would be able to let students make up their own mind as to which theory is correct. We must realize that creation is just as much of a scientific theory as evolution is. They are both based on the same facts. Creation has an amazing amount of scientific evidence that supports it. It can be found in every area of life, and oftentimes is more credible than the evidence that is supported by the evolution theory. As I've said before, we must examine our past to create a future. These theories will affect the way that you live. They are everywhere and attain to everything that we know. There should be a greater effort to examine all scientific findings that are related to the creation of the world. We should not exclude creation and definitely should not solely focus on evolution. Examine the evidence for yourself, and I guarantee you that you will find that creation is a legitimate and realistic explanation of our origin. The need for our society to expand its view on the creation of the world is vital to us growing as a community, nation, and as a world. Thank you.